Welcome back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today, going to be a story titled, Am I the a-hole for calling the police after my wife did something pretty bad to our daughter? And a shout out to RK for sending this story. And guys, this story is about a guy, husband and father, who is now divorcing his wife after having to call the police on her after she completely lost it and started wailing on the teenage girl. And needless to say, guys, you're going to see in this story, she is an awful wife. But more importantly to this story is she is a big, giant narcissist. She's one of those people that no matter what it is, it's always somebody else's fault. And this guy has endured this crap for so long, he's finally lost it, in particular when he feels and knows his kids are in danger. And that'll be a very good one to make the point, guys, what's so important to understand and know this material and understand human nature. And that way, as men, you encounter women like this, you don't marry them or get involved with them because they're not going to change and your life will be a nightmare. And it also shows why, as men, you have to be strong and stand up for yourself. This guy here definitely didn't help the situation by being passive and letting her get away with these things because now it impacted his kids. However, he does make a comeback in the end. A little longer story here, guys, but it's more details that we can learn from. So it starts off, says here, Hi folks of Reddit. My wife and I, after 20 years of marriage, are at a crossroads following an incident in December. Well, you're not at crossroads, you're getting divorced. We have 2 children, 2 teenagers, a 17-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl, who are typically flexing their independence, though they're both really good kids. They're smart, honest, talented in their own ways. I'm going to be deliberately light on the background here in order to keep this shortish. Shortish? This ain't shortish, dude. I suffered chronic major depressive disorder my entire adult life, and one of the major failings of my condition is I don't cope with chronic stress well at all. In other words, yeah, you got depression, so you avoid conflict. Well, men can't avoid conflict when it's impacting their lives and their loved ones. I'm good in a crisis, quick to act rationally when needed, but I tend to shut down with chronic stress. Okay, so during the big things, you step up and man up, but the other stuff, you let go. After 9 years in a very stressful job, I resigned in November to take a break for looking for something less stressful. Last day was the Friday before Christmas. Historically, I've been the earner, the creative, the voice of reason, and the more academic achiever. My wife has always been the well-organized one, as well as the better cook. She consistently been on high-level administrative roles since we met and earns a good income. She's generally an excellent parent when it comes to day-to-day stuff, organizing holidays, social activities, and all that stuff. Excellent parent, okay, it's scheduling, but certainly not being a loving, nurturing, supportive mother, as we're all about to see. However, she has an angry streak, and I recently came to the realization that she's quite the covert narcissist. She ain't very covert to me, based on reading this story. Over the last few years, we've clashed quite a bit, and how do we raise the kids? Yeah, if someone who has an anger streak, and when they get furious, destroy things, and mentally and emotionally abuse somebody and get physical, that ain't a good mom, dude. In the last few months, we've clashed heavily about our daughter's new boyfriend. He's a very nice kid, respectful, sweet to my daughter, and they're madly in love, it seems. At 15, it's called infatuation. Unfortunately, or perhaps fortunately, he has altered our daughter's perspective on what a normal family looks like and how it operates. You mean he comes from a normal, loving family where there's a narcissist for a mother? For perspective here, my wife has generally ruled the family and generally has things her way. Smack! Never should that be the case, and you're going to see the damage that causes. I tend to give in whenever there's conflict, as I like to keep the peace so the kids never have really enjoyed the flexibility or independence they'd like. Smack! He's a pushover. Guys, you can't be this way. Women don't respect weakness, and they then get worse. The man has to be the leader. Is what it is. Now that our daughter has seen how different and better it can be, she has rebelled. Late last year, she'd stay at her boyfriend's family's house without our knowledge. After several days of us trying to convince her to return home, she's only agreed to return if changes were made in the home. Well, you know it's pretty bad if that's what the girl's doing. She wants to be with his family than theirs. Evidently, the changes weren't substantial enough, and only a few weeks later, she left again. I was sympathetic to our daughter's position, while my wife started referring to her as a lost child, and told me I'd have to deal with her in the future. She came home, but spent as much of time away as possible, as she wasn't comfortable at home. And you would know it if she just wants to be at the boyfriend's house to hook up, as 15-year-olds do. But there you go, it's pretty bad. So, hey, Dad, this is where you screwed up as a father and husband, frankly, by not protecting your kids, by letting your wife be the way she is. And I want to bet you there was more things going on behind the scenes with the wife and kids than he knew. This prompted me to initiate a discussion with my wife about our poor communication, and I suggested a marriage counselor to help us reconcile our differences and help us find a healthier means to communicate, as we usually spiral into her losing her temper and me giving in to the peace. Right here. So he's trying to work on it. Well, watch how the wife reacts. Over the remainder of the year, I suggested this numerous times as we'd grown increasingly distant to the point that I'd spend nights sleeping on the couch. Smack, smack, smack. My God, dude. I'm glad he's doing something, but this is what happens. I'd also recommended she look into anger management some years ago when our son went through this phase. Ironically, her response was, "Go F yourself." In other words, nothing wrong with me. So, when people say I'm going to stay in it for the kids, even though things are bad with the wife, this is what the kids deal with. They see the fighting and the lack of love and the turmoil and all that. And right here, the daughter wants to get as far away as possible. Who can blame her? And the son went through the same thing. But nope. It's not the wife's fault. After discussing my mental state with my doctor, he recommended I should talk to a shrink. So I had 2 sessions in December to address depression and burnout, as well as the state of our marriage. Bear in mind that I just resigned and was under ridiculous pressure to hand over 9 years of my role to 2 staff who were just not equipped to take it on. On Christmas Day, I put my best brave face and tried to enjoy the day with my wife's family. Food, drink, and I tried to keep in the spirit. However, the work stress I suffered and leaving my role only days before, plus a lack of sleep over the recent months, I simply wasn't feeling it after about 5 hours and decided to take myself home. 5 hours with the in-laws is more than enough time on Christmas, thank you. That evening, my wife said things needed to change. I agreed and again suggested a marriage counselor. She again refused as she's convinced I'm the only person with a problem. Of course. She's perfect. I'm the one who needs to change. And I said I can't go to marriage counseling for both of us, and that's where it was left. Well, it's about time you grew a spine a little bit, but damage has been done. We didn't talk much after that. We made no plans to New Year's Eve nor an annual trip to the school holidays. In Australia, the long break is over Christmas in January. It was tense, and I found it extremely difficult to talk to her, as every conversation about anything meaningful became a fight. So he's been in this marriage all this time, and I bet you that's part of his depression and problems because of her. But at the end of the day, she's an a-hole, we can all agree. But guess what? He's an a-hole too for caving and giving in. And the excuse always is, I want to keep the peace. Well, by you being a so-called peacemaker, you're enabling the bad behavior. It's just like in real life. Peace through strength. They know not to mess with you. End of story. It is what it is. So the incident occurs before New Year's Day. Our daughter is at the train station after seeing her boyfriend for the day and called to see if one of us can pick her up to save her the 20-minute walk. Being a Sunday, the buses aren't very regular in the suburbs, so the wife goes to get her. Evidently, in the car on the trip home, the wife mentioned New Year's Eve at her sister's house, while the daughter says she's already made plans with her boyfriend and we didn't have any. I later found out that my wife had made plans on Christmas Day for the family and simply hadn't told us. I'd also known about my daughter's plans, but hadn't mentioned them to my wife as I wasn't aware we had any other plans. They're arguing about it as they walk in the front door, and I'm sitting on the couch quietly. We had a 3-way argument about who knew what was going on and what we were going to do. I side with my daughter and support the notion that she keeps her plans, which is met with daggers from my wife. I bet. You're going to agree with me, husband, you little pussy. So she focuses on me and the fact that I haven't supported her position, which develops into an argument of how we don't communicate. He doesn't communicate because guess what? It always ends in fights. And she wants to communicate in a way that he just agrees with her and goes along with her plans. This guy has made his mistakes. We agree. But this dude has tried, not a very good job, but tried. But she is just an unreasonable tyrant. When I point out the reason we don't communicate is it always ends in a fight, she decides to follow my daughter into her bedroom to verbally attack her next. I'm bracing for the usual verbal tirade, following by silent treatment for the few days. Then I hear my daughter scream from her bedroom. I leap into action and round the door to see my daughter on the floor in a defensive position with arms around her head. Holy crap. My wife is standing over her with a blind rage on her face. I grab my wife's wrist and scream at her to get out, though she quickly pulls away. Little spoiler here, you find out the wife was wailing on her, smacking her, kicking her and all that. Yeah, this is how freaking psycho she is. Guarantee this isn't her first time doing this. This is what happens when you stay with one of these psychos. This is what happens when you are, the peacemaker, if you will. Weak. Now, does this mean everybody that acts weak is going to have a husband or wife that acts this way? No, but with someone like her, it's as clear as day. Covert narcissist, my butt. She's an absolute in-your-face narcissist and abusive. These poor kids are suffering because he wouldn't do what he had to do, but now he is. I think I must have made the subconscious realization that if I continued this line of action, it will be me in the back of the police car. So, instead, I repeatedly ordered my wife to get out without leaving the room. At this stage, I don't actually know what's happening as I didn't see anything. She eventually leaves the room and we're arguing in the lounge room. All the while I'm ordering her to leave the house, knowing full well that when she gets angry, it takes a considerable amount of time to calm her down. I just want her out of the house so I can see my daughter. She refused to leave, even after I threatened to call the police. So I told my daughter to join me and her brother in the front room when I make the call. The Christmas tree suffers from her wrath next as shards of glass from ornaments now litter the lounge room. So she's freaking out and destroying things in her path. She's freaking fucking unhinged. My God. Hello, husband. This is why you shouldn't have stayed married to her all this time. Why do you think the kids are trying to get away from all this crap? And they're young. After several minutes on the phone, all the while I'm telling my wife I haven't given them any address details and can hang up at any moment, I eventually give the operator the address and details of the domestic issues. After I'm advised by a unit is being dispatched, I will end the call. I let her know that the police are on the way. Well, that's great he's doing that, and she deserves it, but we all know darn well this could go very badly for him, and she ends up blaming him. All she has to do is punch herself a few times and say, he did that to me, and they're pulling him away. And this is in Australia, a country I've heard definitely has been embracing the feminist movement, and men are always the bad guys, and you get the point. I think she realized I wasn't bluffing and being packing her bag in a fit of rage, and then she leaves. Of course, I call the emergency line, and I ask them to cancel the unit, but they advise that given the type of incident, they will probably come anyway. After you make a report, the cops are coming. Well, after the incident, it's the usual reports, statements, intervention order, and court hearings. 3 of us are now living in the house, and the wife has very little contact. In other words, she's out of there. Amazing this actually happened. I don't know the outcome of the criminal hearing, as we weren't required to be present. How can you not want to be present for that? You want to know this is your wife and the mother of your kids, and obviously you're getting rid of her, but still. We've had a few face-to-face meetings to discuss what to do next, as I made clear that this is the end of our marriage. Thank God. Thank God, dude. Every guy has strength in them. It just takes a lot for guys to finally pull it out. And I think he'd take this to the end of the earth. But when his kids are being endangered, thank God he stepped up. I suggested that an apology to our daughter would be in order, and a good place to start, though nearly 6 weeks later, none is forthcoming. Of course, she's not going to apologize to the daughter because it's the daughter's fault, because she's a narcissist. At our last meeting, I wanted to discuss how she can come home and fix things for the kids' sake, but was struck by her stance on the incident. She asked me if I regret calling the police and if I'm sorry for how it affected her. She's the victim now? She was wailing on the daughter and she's the victim here? The daughter wanted to get away from her. And frankly, the weak-ass father, too. For perspective, I've learned later that my wife had slapped my daughter in the face, thrown her to the floor, and started kicking her before I entered the room. There's no going back from that. Never. Not just from the husband, but the daughter. Think about it, guys. When you were a teenager and that was your parents doing that to you, would you ever have anything to do with them ever again? Well, if you're fucked up and drawn to trauma, you would, but no, absolutely not. And when he says fix things and apologize for the kid's sake, he means not to get back together, but if they have a relationship down the road. There's no relationship after this. Of course, in the calm light of a new day, I absolutely felt that I'd done the right thing to protect my daughter. However, my wife believes we could have handled it all without the police involved, and that now she's the victim. No, she's pissed off because now she's been busted. She's hiding the details of the incident from her family to protect my reputation with her family. Bullshit. She's hiding the incident and controlling the narrative so she doesn't look bad. You got to control the narrative. There are a couple other little nuggets of this conversation she relayed with, which indicate that the people she has talked to about this are all shocked, as I've always been such a gentleman in the past. She's playing the victim card very hard. Finally, I'll be the first to admit I'm not the perfect husband or father. You have not been the perfect husband or father. More like you've been the perfect father. Depression and the COVID have certainly taken a lot of me, and I do wish to be better than I am. I have no doubt that my condition has been a considerable impact on my wife's state of mind. Stop blaming yourself for her ways. You've been weak, but stop blaming yourself. I'm also acutely aware that this is really not easy for folks to make impartial judgments based solely on the statements of one party. That said, am I the a-hole for calling the police? Smack! You still don't get it. No, you're not the a-hole. She's a piece of garbage. You heard what she was doing to the daughter in a fit of rage. You think the police it isn't warranted a phone call? Come on, man. Now, you've done the right thing now by calling the police. You're doing the right thing by divorcing her. But you need to also control the narrative and end it and get you and your kids as far away from her as possible. She's awful. End of freaking story. You did not do the wrong thing here. So anyhow, guys, long story short, yes, he's been weak. Yes, he's made a lot of mistakes, but finally, he's ending it with her, and good for him. Now, there are a bunch of updates here, but the thing is, the updates are more him just responding to questions and stuff like that, and just little details that I'm not going to go over. I was going to, but I'm not. Some of you may want to hear the updates, but you can look it up. But the point is, he's getting help, he's doing that, and he's divorcing her. End of freaking story. But the point of the whole thing is, she's a narcissist, she's awful, and she's got to go. And you got to listen to these stories, hear from other people's mistakes, so that way, guys, you may not have a relationship like this. There are a lot of awful people out there, but you got to stand up for yourself. And this is why I do what I can to help build guys up so that they encounter people like this in their lives. They don't get in a relationship with them, and if they do and see their true colors, they can get out. Because a lot of people are just so worn down, they don't do it. And for God's sakes, if you don't do it for yourself, do it for your children, for heaven's sake. So anyhow, in the end, good for him. But my God, this could have been prevented very much by him ending with her years ago. And I'm willing to bet you that her getting physical when she got angry, this has been happening probably forever with those kids. Again, why do you think they want to get out of there? So anyhow, guys, good for him for calling the cops. All right, guys, that's it for today. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And guys, you find a good story you want me to cover, send it my way. strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. And if it's a good one, I'll definitely cover it. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. I'll catch you next time.